Hello, my name is Michael Williams, and believe it or not, growing up, I used to stutter. And I know some of you are probably not going to believe that, so I want you to follow me here as I share with you my story about how I overcame stuttering. As far back as I can remember, probably when I was in preschool, we had something called nursery school, and then we had preschool, kindergarten, first grade, and so forth. And I can remember back when I was in like first grade, where the teacher would ask me to read, so you're sitting there at your desk and they give you something and you have to say your ABCs and you have to read and you have to do those kinds of things. And I can remember just for some reason I was not able to speak up and say the letters of the alphabet, or not able to read a sentence or read a word, not because I didn't know how to, just because the words wouldn't come out. And I can remember that it just felt weird, it felt frustrating, it felt like, what the heck is wrong with me? And so during that time they had speech therapists assigned to schools, and while she wasn't there every week and every day, I do remember having to go to the office of the speech therapist. And the thing that I remembered most about it is that it didn't work. It just made me more frustrated because she would have me reading and making sounds and doing things, and I would just go back to class and just be more frustrated. And it was kind of embarrassing because, people were wondering, well, why does he have to go out and where is he going and what's wrong with him? And I knew that I knew the answers, I knew that I could read, but I just wasn't able to get it out. And I know that some of you can identify with that. So if you fast forward a few years as we get up into, fifth and sixth and seventh grade, there were times where I was able to speak well, and there were other times where I could barely speak at all. And I would make these faces and I would be pushing out words, and there were times where I would literally bite my tongue until it would start to bleed because I was clamping down. And this was really embarrassing. And the thing I think that was most embarrassing is that I knew the answers. A lot of times I would know the answers and wouldn't raise my hand because I was afraid that I was going to get stuck again. Finally, from taking certain tests, the school realized, hey, this guy is pretty smart, right? He belongs in the smart class. There's nothing, maybe he just probably has a speech impediment, something wrong with his speech, but he's a smart guy. So eventually I was moved to the smart class, what we call the rapid class. But I still struggled, especially with reading aloud, right? Reading aloud was one of the things that I hated because the words are there, you can't hide them, you can't switch them, you have to read them. And so the thing that would be most frightening for me is when they're going around the class, okay, Susie, you read the first line, and Johnny, you read the second line, Michael, you read the third line, and I'm just about to have a heart attack because I was completely just fear-struck and just frightened that, oh my God, I'm going to have to read and I know I'm going to get stuck. So they would come around and I would just struggle through it and making noises and faces and all kinds of things. And this went on for years. Eventually, I learned how to hide it by just not saying anything, by telling the teacher to pass or do all different kinds of things to kind of work through it and work around it. But it most definitely had an effect on my social life, right? And even though I was a child, I still had a social life. So there were girls I wouldn't go talk to because I wouldn't be able to say anything. Like I'd walk up to them and not say anything not because I was afraid so much, just I couldn't get the words out. And so I wouldn't talk to certain girls, I wouldn't do certain things or participate in certain activities because my speech was limited, my speech was limiting me. So I know exactly how you feel. If you're watching this and you're a young child, you're a young person, I know how it feels to feel limited, to feel trapped inside your own head where you have something to say, you want to speak, you want to go out and talk to people, and you want to have fun, and you just can't. And some of you have probably experienced this where you go through these cycles. Some days you feel really great, your speech is fluent. Other days you can't say anything. And it's frustrating, and sometimes I'm sure that I've cried about it. I know growing up in the church, one of the things that I did is I prayed and I asked God to remove it, to heal me of it, just take it away. I would pray, 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 pray. And that never happened. So I was wondering, okay, so what's up with you, God? How come you don't take this away? This is something that's limiting me, it's hurting me, it is like destroying my childhood. But he never took it away. And so this happened all throughout my childhood, all the way up until the time I was in my mid to late 20s. Now, let me just go back a little. So imagine being a teenager. Again, you're in that period of time where you're dating, you want to go out, ask girls to dance and ask girls out to the movies or whatever. So there were a lot of people that I just wouldn't go up to. So if you felt this normal fear of going up to someone and asking them out, and you compound that with the fear of stuttering, right? So now you just have this normal fear that everyone would have, and now you have this fear of stuttering. So that just compounds it. Now you're really afraid. So it limited my social life to a degree. And in some ways, I'm kind of glad, because now I'm able to understand, I'm able to empathize with people a lot more than what I would have. Because I had a lot of confidence. I was a very confident young person, but at the same time, this stuttering thing would reduce my confidence and keep me from doing things that I knew that I could do. Now, I don't know if there were some things that happened in my life that prompted this. One thing that I'll share with you is I was actually placed into a long-term foster home. My birth mother, she was not able to take care of me, and she actually left me in the hospital, and I stayed in foster care for about 6 months in the hospital, or someplace, I don't know, I was 6 months old, but I was someplace, not with a family, not with my family, for 6 whole months. And it wasn't until I was 6 months that this wonderful family, the Thomas family, took me in, and they've been my family ever since. They're still my family now. While my mother and father have passed away, I still have sisters and brothers. The thing is that I was abandoned, I was left. And there were times growing up, though, where my birth mother re-entered my life. She came in and she left, she came in and she left. So I don't know if that impacted my speech. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But there were some events that happened where I would see my speech go up and it would come back down, go up and come down. So sometimes there are things that happen to us that impact our speech, and sometimes they're not. It's just a part of nature, it's just a part of our development. So fast forward to college. I'm still struggling with my speech, but I figured out a way to kind of work around it. I figured out a way to keep my confidence boosted. I took martial arts, did martial arts for many years, participated in sports, and this helped to boost my confidence, which helped with my speech, but I still struggled. I still walked around with this pressure, this fear. It's like a time bomb, except you don't know when it's going to go off. So you want to go order something, you want to go up and talk to someone, and you never know if you're going to be able to say it. You never know if you're going to be able to ask that person or make that phone call or order that food. You just never know. So all of a sudden, you block. Nothing comes out. So growing up, going through high school, going through college, this is what I struggled with. And it can make you feel very frustrated. It can make you feel angry because you've got all this knowledge and these skills and abilities and talents inside of you that are limited, and you can't really get them out the way that you want. And so I felt like I was walking around with this weight all the time, with this pressure, something holding me down and holding me back for a long time. And this drove me to read a lot of self-development, personal development books. I mean, that's all I used to read growing up because I was searching for answers. I was trying to figure out, how do I get over this thing? I remember coming across like an autobiography of James Earl Jones. I remember after reading that book, I went fluent for a while. Then it slowly faded away. I'm not sure why. I mean, I do have some ideas as to why that happened, but I'm not exactly sure. But I know that I went fluent for a while. So I kept searching for the secret, kept searching. I could never find it until I was in my mid-20s. And this guy introduced me to a guy named Brian Tracy. Not personally, but so Brian Tracy is a personal development business coach. And he gave me some of his audios. And then I finally got some of his videos. And it was around that time, I was in my mid-20s, where something was revealed to me, and I'll tell you what that is in just a few minutes. Let me rewind just a little bit, because I went through college, I was able to graduate from college, I was able to go through ROTC, I became an officer in the military, and one of the things that happened was I was standing in front of my platoon, and I had to give a command, call them to attention. So I had to say, attention. And what happened is, I'm standing there, and I couldn't get those words out. And it was so embarrassing. So here I am, I'm the leader, I'm the platoon commander, and I can't call my platoon to attention. So I had to call in the platoon sergeant and explain, for some reason, I'm stuck, I can't get the words out. Can you go ahead and call them to attention? And I left. It was probably one of the most embarrassing times of my entire life. I later explained to them what happened, and fortunately, that didn't happen again. But it was extremely embarrassing. And it was just shortly after that time that I met this guy who introduced me to Brian Tracy. But let me tell you what I was doing before I became an officer. Before I became an officer, I had a job working at an insurance company as, guess what? A telephone operator, or a policy service assistant, right? And what this required me to do was be on the phone all day, which I hated to do. See, at this time I was married, and I would have my wife make most of the phone calls because it was just draining, like answering the phone and talking on the phone, giving out address and phone numbers, social security numbers. Can't get those numbers out, so I would have her do it. But I took this job because it was one of the better jobs that I could get at that time. I didn't have any kind of a specialized degree, so I just went in and took this job. And one of the things that I did is I challenged myself. I said, you know what, this is probably going to help me speak better. It's definitely going to help me talk on the phone better. And I told them, I said, you know what, while we were going through the training, I said, is it okay if I don't say hello, but if I say yes, hello? And they said, sure. And I said, because sometimes I struggle with my speech a little. So this is what I would tell people when they needed to know. I'd say, sometimes I struggle with my speech, sometimes I stutter just a little bit, and so I may have to do this. And this was something that I would say if I had to read aloud in class. Sometimes I struggle with my speech. And that helped to reduce the pressure, right? So I told them this when we were going through the training, and this really helped a lot, because by them knowing this, it gave me a little bit of flexibility. And one of the things we had to do, which I also hated, was you had to read a script. So they have a script that you have to go through when you're answering the phone, and when you have to write policies, and you have to review policies. And so I had to do this script. So I had to figure out a way to do this fluently. And I did. But there were times where I was working, and I would answer the phone, and nothing would come out. And I'd have to pretend like I got disconnected, and I'd have to call the person back. Or there were times where I was in the middle of a conversation, I just totally got stuck. I'm just going along smooth and just totally got stuck. And I had to pretend like what? Like I got disconnected. So I'm sure people are saying, well, why is Michael Williams always getting disconnected? But it was just like this game that I had to play because I was getting stuck. So it definitely improved my ability to answer the phone, because that's all I was doing, is answering the phone. So sometimes when I was at home, I would say, this is Michael Williams, thank you for calling the name of the company. So answering the phone was no problem. Talking on the phone got a lot better, but I was still getting stuck. So I would come home with headaches every single day from having to switch words and change words and do all kinds of different things just to say the things that I wanted to say. So I understand how you might feel walking around blocking and never knowing when you're going to get stuck, and not being able to answer the phone, not being able to say your name, not being able to give your phone number or your email address. I understand. So finally, fast forwarding again, this guy introduced me to Brian Tracy. And so I started listening to his audio. I said, that's kind of boring. But I kept listening because there was something there. And during the same time, I was really displeased with my career because, again, I was coming home with headaches And it just didn't feel like I was called to do this. I was like my mid-20s then. So I started doing some soul searching and praying and saying, Lord, what is it that you want me to do? And it became clear that what I was supposed to be doing, I felt called to do, was to help other people in some kind of way, help them fulfill their potential. I know that sounds kind of general, but literally that's what I felt like I was called to do. There were times growing up where I felt like I was called to be a preacher as well, because I just loved to try to preach. And when I would get into the preaching mode, I wouldn't stutter at all. Right? Me and my sister used to play church, and I would just start preaching and it was just smooth. So, that's strange. So in my mid-20s, doing some soul searching, trying to figure out what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, and it became clear, whatever it is you're supposed to be doing, it's going to require you to speak, and to speak well. So I said, whoa, Lord, I stutter, so how am I going to fulfill my calling when I stutter? And it made me think back about the story of Moses, how Moses, maybe he stuttered, maybe he didn't, but he definitely had a problem with his speech. Some scholars say it wasn't really stuttering, he was slow to speech, and others say that it was stutter. It doesn't matter, he had a problem with his speech, and he knew it. And so God called him to lead the people of Israel out, and he was like, whoa, it's kind of big, it's kind of heavy, right? And I have a problem with my speech. Maybe you should call somebody else. And the Lord said, no, I'll call you, and I'm going to give you all the help you need, and here's this. And he just kept making excuses. So finally the Lord God said, listen, I'm going to give you someone, or I'm going to tell you what to say, you tell them what to say, and you're going to get this job done, right? So Moses finally said, okay, I'll do it. So then I was like, okay, so I felt like what was impressed upon me is that, hey, you've got to figure out a way to improve your speech, or otherwise you're never going to be happy, you're never going to be fulfilled, because this is what I'm calling you to do. I said, okay, got to figure it out. And so it was this guy, Brian Tracy, that I started listening to, and I started to learn about the subconscious mind. It was once I learned that, in fact, I looked at my subconscious mind like it was an audio cassette. Many of you may not even know what that is, because decades ago we used to have audio cassettes. And I looked at my subconscious mind like an audio cassette, because I could feel when I was going to stutter. I could feel something saying, something impressing upon me that you're going to get stuck. It's like, you're about to say this, you're going to get stuck. And maybe it wasn't a voice, it was just like a sense that you know you're going to get stuck. Do you know what I'm talking about? It could be you're about to enter into a situation. You're making a phone call, you're ordering food, you're about to walk up to a young lady or a young man, and you just get the sense you're going to get stuck. Or you're speaking and you see this word comes, you go, you're going to get stuck. You just know it and you get stuck. So that's how this was. And so what I learned is that my subconscious mind is like an audio cassette that's been recorded to say, you're going to get stuck. You're going to get stuck here, you're going to get stuck there. It's just playing that over and over. But the good thing is that I can record over this audio cassette with a new message. And because I believed that, I acted as if that was true. So I started doing affirmations every single day, recording a new message on this audio cassette that I'm an excellent speaker. I didn't say, I'm not going to stutter, I'm not going to, don't stutter, I don't want you to stutter. Michael, please, I hope you don't get... No, I said, I'm an excellent speaker, I'm a great speaker. I used to say, I like myself. Because for some of you who struggle with stuttering, you beat yourself up. Some of you, not all of you, may feel bad about yourself. I felt bad about myself. I used to beat myself up. Why am I doing this? Why? So you feel like a victim. Why is this happening to me? Why can't this just be taken away from me? Why can't I say what I want to say? Right? You just feel bad, so your self-esteem goes down. Your self-confidence comes down. And so this was just, all these things kept happening. So I started boosting my self-esteem, boosting my self-confidence. So one of the things that I did was doing affirmations every morning. Now I'm sharing with you how I overcame stuttering. I started listening to these audios, which changed the way that I thought. I understood that I had this audio cassette that was playing that I could record over. So I started doing affirmations. So I was kind of self-recording, right? Self-recording, writing a new script, if you will. The second thing that I did is I knew that I wanted to be a speaker. I knew that I wanted to get out and do public speaking because I really loved it. It's just that I had a hard time. I never knew when I was going to get stuck. So what I did is I started modeling Brian Tracy. And I started creating my own presentations based on his. So I would watch him, I would study him, and then I would act as if I were him. I mimicked him, act as if, create my own presentation, spending I don't know how many hours watching and listening, then practicing doing my own presentation. Even got a little recording thing and started recording, made my own cassettes. So I mimicked Brian Tracy. What else did I do? Third thing that I did is I actually went out and created opportunities to speak in public, right? So here's the funny thing. My conversations, I still struggled in, right? I still struggled, it's like this pressure, couldn't get started, couldn't say things. It wasn't terrible, it had gotten a little better, but it wasn't where I wanted it to be. But my presentations were almost flawless. I could speak for 45 minutes without ever getting stuck and without any notes. Right? Because I had worked that hard. So I created a new identity, a new persona for presenting. So I'd go out, go to colleges and say, hey, I got this presentation on time management, goal setting. Can I give it to your students? I don't care if you pay me or not. I kept doing that. And some would say no, but many would say yes. And I kept doing that, right? I kept giving presentations, which boosted my confidence. Fast forward some years. Ended up going to seminary. Seminary is a place where you go when you become a pastor or a minister. I spent almost 4 years in seminary learning about the Bible and about other religions and about running a church and preaching and teaching. And I became a pastor while I was in seminary. It was in my first year or two that something happened that I want to share with you. It was the sense of freedom that I experienced. Like, it was around 1997. Some of you weren't even born then, right? It's around 1997 that all of a sudden I figured out something and I felt, remember I told you that I felt like I was walking around with this pressure. It kind of felt like a big, wet, black blanket. It was heavy and it was always kind of dark. It was just holding me back and keeping me down. Well, in 1997, something happened where this was lifted and I felt like, wow, I can do anything I want to do. I can be anyone I want to be. I can say anything I want to say because I'm free of this now. It didn't mean I never got stuck again. It just meant my identity had shifted now, shifted to being an excellent speaker. And here's one of the things that I learned. And I questioned myself. I said, why is it you can preach and you can teach and you can do presentations, but you still struggle in conversation? So I analyzed this. I said, because I changed states. I changed the way I speak in conversations from the way that I do when I'm presenting. Well, how do you speak when you present? It's more energy. You use your body more facial expressions, more hands. You inflect your voice more. Your pitch is a little higher. It's not just kind of monotone. I said, okay, why don't you speak like that when you converse? I said, well, that's going to sound kind of funny. It sounds like I'm always preaching or teaching when I'm conversing. And people don't like that. I said, so what? Just do it and tone it down a little, right? So you don't have to act like you're preaching or teaching all the time. Just turn it down to make it more relevant to conversations. Once I did that, it totally transformed my conversations, and that's when I felt free. So what I'm sharing with you is that I know what it feels like as a child to stutter, to not be able to say what you want, to feel embarrassed, to not be able to read in class, to not be able to ask for the things you want to ask for, to say. I know what it feels like as a teen, to have your social life somewhat limited. I know what it feels like as a college student to not be able to ask people out, to not want to read, or to feel the fear of having to read in class and give presentations and possibly get stuck or avoid giving presentations. I even changed my career because I didn't want to do something where I had to give a whole lot of presentations, right? So I didn't do the thing I wanted to do because of that. I know what it's like as a professional, right? Changing my career path because, oh, I'm going to have to speak a lot there, I'm going to have to speak a lot there. Can't do that, can't do this. I know what it's like. I know what it's like as a master's student. I I know what it's like as a professional. But I also know what it's like to be free of that. So I felt the pain, I felt the isolation. I know what it's like to feel trapped in your own mind and your own body. I know what it's like to be embarrassed, where people look at you because your mouth is quivering or because you're pushing things, or to just be silent, to avoid the whole situation altogether, just not go, not say anything. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to feel like, man, I know the answer, but I don't feel like I'm gonna be able to say it, either in school or at work, to want to speak up, to want to take on different responsibilities because, you know what, I'd like to do that, but I'm going to have a problem speaking. It's going to require me to give presentations, to do phone conferences, I can't do it. I don't think I can do it. I know what that's like. But I also know what it's like to be free of that. Not only do I know what it's like from personal experience, but I also know what it's like to help other people become free. Because now I'm a speech coach. So I've done things from presentations, workshops. I've been a pastor, I've preached, I've become a professor at college. I've been a relationship coach doing full-day retreats. I've done live TV, I've done live radio, I've done recorded TV, recorded radio, and now I'm a speech coach helping people from around the world. I've been to India twice and stayed for a month each time to work with a doctor to help him with his speech. I've worked with doctors, I've worked with all kinds of people from around the world to help them with their speech. So not only do I know personally what it feels like, right? This isn't something I read, I'm not making any of this up, this is absolutely true. I know what it's like from the inside. I know what it's like, though, as a professional, as an expert who's helped other people through it. So anything that you see and hear from me in my other programs, not only is it scientifically based or scientifically proven, but it's also experientially based and experientially proven. And then here's the thing, not only have I experienced it, but I've helped other people experience it. Because yeah, I can experience something and say, well, this is what I did. It doesn't mean it's going to work for you. But I've now worked with hundreds and hundreds of people, and I know what works for you. I know what works for them, for enough people that I can say, this will work for you. Not only because I've helped other people do it, not only because I've experienced it myself, but also the science says that this works. So I just want you to know that I understand where you're at, no matter what your age. Even if you're 60-some years, I'm actually a lot older than probably what I might look or than what you might think that I am. So I understand what it's like. I work with people who are 70 years old, work with people who are young. I know what it's like. I know where you're at. I've been there, and I've helped other people get to a place where their life has been completely transformed. I've worked with people who were severe stutters. I mean, literally, they were making faces and they were doing things, just weren't able to get the words out from that. People who would have other people speak for them at work, people who had difficult time getting jobs. I've worked with people who are severe and who were not severe, and I've helped them get better jobs. I've watched some people who were severe stutterers go out and win speaking contests and Toastmasters multiple times. I've helped people get their PhDs, become medical doctors. I've helped people make $1 million deals. I've helped people get jobs paying them $10,000 more. One guy I helped, he got a job making $34,000 more. I've helped people get their first jobs, and I'm still helping people do this. So I am someone that understands and can help you go from wherever you're at to wherever you want to be, because I've been there, okay? So thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and to listen to my story. I hope that some part of it was perhaps inspiring, perhaps instructive for you, and I look forward to hearing from you and to working with many of you into the future, to helping you transform your speech, transform your life, but transcend stuttering, to rise above it, to become an excellent speaker, a powerful presenter, a confident communicator. All of these things are possible. These aren't just words I'm putting out. I've seen people do this, and I know that you can do it too. My name is Michael Williams, and thank you so much for taking the time to hang out here with me, and I look forward to seeing you again.